I am Pastor Wright.
And I'm Vicar Leeper.
And today we're going to continue our looking and studying of God's use of fire in the Bible. Today we move on to the Exodus and God's use of fire in the pillar of fire to guide, lead, and to bring a stop to Pharaoh's attack or recapture. And so before we get there, we left off with the burning bush.
Yes.
How do we get to the pillar of fire? What happened in between?
So in our first week, we talked about the flaming sword. But last week, we talked about the burning bush, where God spoke to Moses through this burning bush and told him to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt. Our story today is the culmination of that event. Moses has gone back to the Israelites and has gotten them together. They were a little reluctant at first, but he went to Pharaoh and said, God says to let my people go. To which Pharaoh said, no. What follows is a series of 10 plagues that befall Egypt, each time Moses returning to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. Pharaoh says no. There's a few times where he says, all right, I'll do it. But once the plagues are removed, he changes his mind. This culminates in the last of the plagues in which the firstborn sons of the Egyptians die. This is an event that is known as Passover, and the Jews will celebrate this for years and years and years to come, and people still celebrate it today. Now, after this, Pharaoh finally gives in and says, okay, I will let you people go. You've asked to go and worship out in the wilderness for 3 days. I'm going to let you do that. So the Israelites get together all of their stuff, all of their possessions, and they even take some of the golden possessions of some of their neighbors, all of their women, their children, their cattle, their men, get all of it together, and they start marching out into the wilderness. And this is where the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud come in.
So God makes a statement to Moses and Israel and basically says, I want you to follow me. And he doesn't just point into the desert and say, I'll meet you in the promised land. He says, I'm going to guide you. I'm going to lead you. Follow me as I manifest myself in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The special theological term for this is called a theophany. That means a physical manifestation of God, and he manifests himself in this cloud by day, the pillar by day, and the fire by night. What's interesting about this is we only see the pillar of the cloud pillar during the day and the fire at night only at the beginning of the Exodus. So as Vicar said, the Israelites leave. And I wonder if Pharaoh's looking over and wondering, why do they need all their cattle for 3 days? Why are they taking gold? What do they think they're going to buy out there? I think he's suspicious.
Yes.
And I think he doesn't really want them to go anyway.
Well, they have been slaves in Egypt, and their huge slave labor force is now going out into the wilderness with all of their possessions. And when they don't return at the end of their 3 days, Pharaoh sends his army after them. But all this while, God has been leading them with the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, which is interesting because why do they need to be moving at night?
They're making their escape. They're going. God is rescuing them, and he's going to move them day and night away from Egypt.
Gotcha. So they're making a run for it. They're making a break, and so the pillar of fire is leading them out even during the night as they travel as far as they can before Pharaoh realizes what's happened.
Absolutely. And I think this is a fascinating point of God. And I don't think that for 3 days and 3 nights, some 600,000 people and their possessions and their gold and their silver and their livestock were on a march. I do think that they moved during the night. How far all night, we don't know. But it was that constant movement. But it was by God's design, by God's guidance, and it was all of God's will. So we see them running away, following God, but then they come to the Red Sea. And when they get there, when they get to the Red Sea, somebody else shows up, Pharaoh and his army. And Pharaoh's going to come and either I'm going to kill you or you're coming back and being my slave. And something stops him. And I think this is an amazing event because the pillar of fire moves from leading and actually goes behind Israel and creates this barrier that Pharaoh and his army could not cross. And so we get this aspect of protection. We get this aspect of God's power and might.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what Pharaoh thought. He saw these 10 plagues. He suffered through the loss of his own son. And now God manifests himself before him. And he still tries to go after Israel.
They rush into the Red Sea that Moses has parted.
Yeah.
And they all perish. Now, before we talk any more about that, I want to go back to something and look at how the Israelites reacted when they got to the Red Sea. They got there. They had been led by God, who had come and revealed himself and was literally traveling with them in this cloud of fire, in this pillar of fire, in this pillar of cloud. And when they get to where God's leading them, they panic because there's no way out now. They're trapped by the sea, and they say, "What have you done to us?"
My favorite line in the Exodus, "Moses, have you brought us out to die because all the graves in Egypt are full?" And I just love that because there's no trust.
Right.
Moses, you brought us to our death. So I mentioned Pharaoh saw the 10 plagues. Pharaoh sees this pillar of fire. The Israelites witness the same thing, and they're the ones who benefit from God's action. And now they're confronted by Pharaoh's army, and I'm out. I can't trust this anymore.
To which Moses responds, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still."
Yeah. Now, I'm with the Israelites on this one. That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
You have Pharaoh, who is highly motivated to come and get you, and he brings his army. And it's not like you can swim with all your possessions, your wife, your children, and your livestock across the Red Sea, even at its narrowest part. It's not like you can carry this stuff. So on a practical level, I get it. But if I saw just one of these plagues, I think I'd be motivated, and I can say this with hindsight, to believe that God will take care of me. And as we know, he does.
Yes. And this event kind of points to some of the other ways that God would reveal himself to his people. The most important being when Jesus came down to earth as a man and revealed himself as both God and man for us. Once again, coming to the Israelites. And in that event, too, there were people who did not trust, even though they had seen amazing things. So before you go blaming the ancient Israelites or saying, "Oh, I would have done better," there's some real questions there. And that's one of the questions we want to ask for you today. How would you respond if you were led by God with a pillar of fire by night? Would you, like Pastor Wright said, anything God says goes, I'm going to completely trust him? Or would you still feel some of that fear? Would you still, be
the angst,
the anxiety? Would you still fear that? Our other question is, what use of fire do you think this is? God has revealed himself in this way. Remember, our main options are fire as judgment and fire as purifying or refining. There is a subcategory under the purifying of fire as guiding. But try to discuss all three and see if you can find maybe a little bit of each of them in this event. Let us know which one you think is most prominent. And if you have any thoughts or questions, don't be afraid to comment, discuss, and let us know what you think.
Thank you for watching, and God's peace.